This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Did you know the Greens have their own podcast?
What?
It's run by former ABC celebrity Tom Ballard and Queensland Greens campaign strategist Emerald Moon. Yes, that's her real name.
Now, okay, they burned you on your name. Classic. That's really good. But do you think they mean I'm still a celebrity who used to be on the ABC, or I'm a former celebrity now? Oh. Would
you like me to tell you what I really think?
Tell me what I want to hear, please.
To be? Yeah.
That's what Serious Danger is all about, just telling me what I want to hear.
Successful actor, Tom Ballard. And writer, author.
Thank you.
This is an email from Advance Australia to its subscribers, its supporters. Thank you to the person who sent this to us on Twitter. I don't know if they want it to be known that they're watching Advance, so I won't say their name, but you know who you are. And I completely missed this. They sent this to me in like November last year, and I have not been checking my Twitter DMs because who the fuck is doing that anymore?
Right. But
this was a whole ass email that they sent out to their supporters about how the Greens aren't who they used to be, but our campaign to let everyone know is working, and we rated a fucking mention.
Well, you say that. They didn't mention the name of the podcast. They didn't put any links in there. They didn't give a shout out. Like, come on, guys. We need the SEO. Shout out a brother.
They will be hearing from my lawyers.
So what do they have to say about us?
So yes, that's right. It's run by former ABC celebrity Tom Ballard and Queensland Greens campaign strategist Emerald Moon. Yes, that's her real name. They published an episode called Should Greens Be Afraid of Advance Australia during the Queensland election campaign? Here's what Emerald had to say about your campaign.
It's your campaign, kids.
Your campaign. I've door-knocked multiple people who use what are clearly these advanced lines when they say why they don't vote Green. And they say, the Greens, I think they're not about the environment anymore. They've got far more radical policies. Now, I haven't gone back and listened, and I'm like, I can see now that probably plays right into their little hands. But I'm sure I said something afterwards about how I don't think that those people were voting Greens before.
You absolutely did. Yes. Yeah, yes. Some important context has been stripped away, which to me is like, well, hang on. Can we believe anything in the Advance Australia emails?
Whoa. I don't know, Tom. You're kind of shaking my faith in Advance. And their very teal-looking spokesperson, Sandra Burke. Do you know what this woman looks like? Had you seen this woman around? She's their spokesperson.
We talked to her. She's been brought in now. She's like a former veteran, I believe. She used to be in the army. So she just
looks so teal. Like the photo that they use is her against like this beach background, and she's just got like the short cropped kind of platinum hair, big smile. Anyway, that's what Emerald had to say. And she says, "You bet. This is encouraging." You bet. You bet, fellow teens.
You better believe.
You better believe.
They may have also said some other things about how they think we're the fucking Satan and evil and a cancer on Australian democracy and society, but we've decided not to include that in this email.
Yes, and completely just, corporate funded and not representative of broader Australia in any way. But this is encouraging, but just a word of caution. The Greens are far more sophisticated than the Yes campaign.
That's true.
They like us. I think they like us. Well,
I mean, we were both struck with the similarities between this and your average Greens email, which is pressure works. This shows that we're working, which is kind of true. It's like, yes, your enemies are paying attention to you and responding. Right.
Now give us $10,000, please, so we can do more of it.
And the email signs off, in regards, in evil, yours in evil, Sandra Burke.
Yeah. To the advanced person listening right now, please consider becoming a Patreon.
Oh, please do.
We always say now, put Labor and the Greens last, but instead... Labor are actually rewarding the Greens here. Sorry, that's my little dog with me. And it's a real concern to any Australian. We've got big problems ahead because if the Greens do...
We're stuck with the hosts of Chapo Shithouse podcast.
Serious danger to Australia.
That's right, everyone. It is ABC celebrity Tom Ballard and Emerald Moon. Former ABC celebrity and Emerald Moon. That's my real name, my birth name. This is Serious Danger, a podcast about green politics in Australia. But it is not, despite what Advance would have you think, an official Greens Party podcast.
Yeah, come on, guys. We've fallen over to make it very clear. This is not the Greens official party podcast.
Quite abundantly clear. It is not the Green Zone podcast, but you know, hey. It is produced by Michael the Griff Griffin. I am, as usual, in Mianjin on Yagara and Turrbal country. Tom, you're at home this week for once?
I am. I'm in Naarm, yes, for once, on Wurundjeri and Bunurong country. Always was, always will be. This week on the show, we're taking a look at the government's announcement to finish the NBN, ? It needs work? What?
Seems pretty good to me.
And we've got some more news hits on the 2025 election front. The election is on. We may as well just say it has started. We're in election season and we've got
We simply don't know when it's going to be. Yeah.
No, just no end in sight. Before we jump into those, we should acknowledge, of course, the big story of the week is this ceasefire deal. Huge headlines, lots of talk around this. It is, to put it mildly, an evolving situation, and it's kind of very hard to figure out exactly how to feel about it, right? Like,
I know.
Seeing people in Palestine celebrating, awesome. It does seem like lots of voices I respect say this is really something, this could be progress. But we're recording this on Friday morning, and already there's talk about Israel pushing back the deadline. There's tensions within the Israeli cabinet as to whether they'd even agree to this particular deal that we have. The deal itself is very ambitious. But at least, you know, a lot of people in good faith are getting excited about the fact that at least for a short period of time, the killing might stop, maybe, ? I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, I have trouble kind of really knowing how exactly to feel about it. But it did seem like a lot of the people who would know were feeling hopeful, but also, yes, like acknowledging the fact that we never should have got to this fucking point. Adam Bandt and Jordan Steele-John released a statement for the Greens saying, quote, "The reports of a ceasefire deal between the State of Israel and Hamas are welcome and overdue, but the invasion of Gaza is something that should never have occurred and has resulted in genocide. Over the past 15 months, we've witnessed unimaginable tragedy as Gaza, an area half the size of Canberra with a population of more than 2 million, has been invaded and tens of thousands of people have lost their lives." They're once again calling on Labor government to do its part, uphold international law, call for a permanent ceasefire, an end to the occupation, end the two-ways arms trade between Australia and Israel, sanction members of the Israeli government involved in war crimes, and have Australia intervene on behalf of South Africa in the ICJ and commit to uphold the ICC warrants.
Yeah. Remember those things? Remember how the guy that we're talking about, the leader, the ally that we're talking about is like had an arrest warrant put out from an international highly respected criminal court? Can we just keep that in mind, everyone? I know it's a new year and you sort of forget. New year, new me. But we really do need to follow up on that business arising from 2024.
Business arising, that's right. Just check in on the actions from last year if we could. This one was against governments who are signatory, who are part of the ICC. Has everyone completed that one? I know.
Please.
It's been really at capacity at the moment. But if we could just circle back.
And let's make that a priority action item if we could.
Yes, can we bold that one actually? Thank you so much, Jenna.
I mean, just stuff like this. Again, this is the truce is supposed to kick in on Sunday, the day this episode comes out. So people listen to this, you know, you're in the future and you're across the stuff. But stuff like this, the Israeli cabinet's vote to confirm the ceasefire agreement has been delayed by a day after a last-minute crisis, with Israeli airstrikes killing more than 70 people in Gaza in the last day. So you kind of go, cool.
Makes you feel
and it was particularly maddening. I don't know if you saw this, but Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State from the US, gives a press conference in which he has the fucking gall to say, you know, really, Hamas have probably recruited as many people from this conflict as we have killed.
Really?
Like, we'll just straight up be like, oh, the thing that the left was screaming at you for 15 fucking months. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even catch that. That's fucking infuriating.
Pretty brief. But obviously, yes, it's evolving in the coming weeks as that situation develops. We will touch back on it on the show, I reckon. But yes, as much as we can say this is good news and that maybe it will mean fewer innocent people killed by the Israeli and US war machine, yay.
That would be great. Also, yay some new people who've signed up to the Patreon. It is, for folks who don't know, $3 a month or however much you want to contribute, goes towards keeping the show running, helps pay Mike, our producer, and you get access to an extra episode every couple of weeks. So thank you to the new subscribers, Jasmine, Cooties, Christian, Elisil, Jesse Lou, Scott, James, and Matt. We very much appreciate it. And we have something that I really would like you to do if you're listening. I mean, I guess if you don't want to focus exactly on what we're saying, you can do things at once. You could go to the show notes and click on this right now. But either way, you could click on it and then listen to the rest of the episode and do this. But it's a survey. We're doing our first listener survey. We kind of had a chat at the start of the year and we're like, we've been doing this for, 3 years?
Something like that, yeah.
And I guess we're curious to know what you, the listener, would like us to do more of or less of, what kind of guests you like, what kind of episodes you like, how frequently you want episodes to come out, how long you want them to be, all those sorts of things. I did a test of the survey. It genuinely took me less than 5 minutes, even as I was pretending to think of my own little answers. So it's super short. It's linked in the show notes, and we would very much appreciate you taking it.
Thanks. You can always contact us, whether you're a patron or not, but a superstar patron at Damien Irving. Send us a message in regards to last week's chat, which I thought was interesting when we were talking about the priorities that Adam Bandt was talking about if the Greens found themselves in a minority government with Labor. I was specifically identifying the idea of expanding Medicare to include mental and dental. From a campaign commerce perspective, this is Damien, it can be a good idea to make your minority government demands things that the media wouldn't normally report on. For instance, when reporting on climate or environment, the media will come to the Greens for comment because we own those issues. They won't come to us when reporting on healthcare, but they have to report our dental and mental policies if we list them as minority demands. Or at least that's how it seems out in Tassie, where every state election is a possible minority government situation. I thought that was a really interesting contribution and a good point. Take. Not that everything is a media, comm strategy. Like we should have good policies that we want to talk about.
Mental are also important.
Yeah.
But I mean, the only thing is
totally true, right?
But would the media come to the Greens when reporting on climate or environment? Questionable. But I think it's true that yes, they're less likely to come to the Greens, or even remember that the Greens exist on issues like healthcare.
Yeah, and it's like, well, if we list this as a priority, okay, you know that our priorities are also climate and nature. You know that we care about them a lot because we're the fucking Greens. But here we are, front and center, identifying a welfare reform that would drastically improve people's lives. We're putting this out there, so we're not the Bob Brown's Greens or whatever.
We're not the Bob Brown's Greens, yeah, so true. We also got some nice feedback from @CaptainCanada85 who said, best Australian political podcast I've come across so far. Missed out on voting in the last federal election, waiting for my citizenship ceremony. Looking forward to putting and they've done a bit of a wordplay here, phony candidate last this year. Phony with the PHON capitalised as Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, for anyone who didn't get it. But hi, Captain Canada. Welcome.
Hi, Captain Canada.
Welcome, mate.
Reporting for duty. We love that stuff. We love if you follow us on social media, leave comments on the YouTube. And, of course, if you can support the show, we'd appreciate it by giving us a 5-star review. That means the world on any podcast app that you listen to. If you give us 5 stars, that spreads the word, gets more people listening. Thank you.
Okay, let's do the show.
Okay.
Well, guess what? This grandma's been just appointed to the NBN committee. Let me know what you think. Hey, another thing, guys, we really need to keep it going. How else am I going to keep my live streaming up to date with you so you can watch me? So, it's important for all of us.
All right, last week it was North Queensland's getting its roads fixed, and then this week it's rural and regional Australia are getting better internet. So it is 100%, you're correct, Tom. It's election season, baby.
Hooray.
Election time. This is from the ABC. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has promised a $3 billion injection to, quote, finish the national broadband network and speed up internet services as Labor and the coalition swing into election campaign mode.
Was it still going? I thought I thought we were all under the impression that it was over and it was done.
No, okay. It is still going because this is just the process of fixing the fuck up that the LNP created off the back of fuck ups that the Labor did, blah, blah, blah. So this is $3 billion to upgrade fibre to the node connections, providing an additional 622,000 fibre connections, with more than half in rural and regional areas. Government says that when it's complete by 2030, more than 11 million homes and businesses, which I think is like 95% in across the country. They will have access to connections enabling speed up to 1 gigabit per second, far beyond the current average connection speed of 76.64 megabits per second.
It's going to be so easy to podcast.
It's a big win for serious danger. Greens win, some would say. If anyone's listening who has been a guest on the show, they know how fun it is when the internet doesn't fucking work. We're trying to record a bloody podcast. So thank you, Anthony Albanese, for supporting podcasters in this digital economy.
Thanks, Elbow.
Yeah. So I have long felt like I don't quite there are a lot of terms around the NBN, and when they're like, well, we're doing the fibre to the premises and the node and everything, I find it a little bit hard to keep track of, but I've refreshed my memory. I want to run through it very quickly.
Love it.
I guess, what has happened here is that Tony Abbott's government in 2013 changed the way that the NBN was going to be rolled out. Initially, it was going to be the good thing. The good thing is where it goes straight to your home. That is fibre to the premises. Cables go right there, full fibre, all the way to your home or business.
FTTP, not to be confused with HTTP. Yep.
Yeah, or FTP, which we also support.
Oh.
Not an official Greens Party podcast.
Is that a sex thing? What's that?
Fuck the police, Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that a sex thing? I mean, no, it's not.
Well, it also stands for File Transfer Protocol, so,
Okay, all right. Anyway, it also stands for Fig Tree Pocket, a suburb in the electorate of Maiwa, so that also gets confusing. But look, that's beside the point. We're talking about FTTP.
Yes.
So this is, 2013. It seems like this was just, first of all, it's classic Liberals being like, nah, it's too expensive. Let's make it shitter.
Yep.
Cut a bunch of things and make it shitter. It also, I learned from some book I was reading. I don't remember what it was, but this book was talking about how Murdoch campaigned
we
quite
should say
vigorously.
our sources. We should always be honest, so that people, if they want to follow up, maybe purchase the source that you're talking about.
At all good bookstores. All right. It was I, Millennial by Tom Ballard.
Oh, interesting.
So Murdoch at the time was like, this is too big and too expensive if you do the NBN properly and do it with FTTP, because also if more people can stream shit, that is a direct competitor to Foxtel, which at the time had this monopoly on pay TV, and people were actually watching that back then. A simpler time. So no, Tony Abbott is like, all right, we're going to fuck it over. We're going to replace fibre to the premises with fibre to the node, and we're going to use the existing network. So we have copper wire and hybrid fibre coaxial, HFC. Yeah. As I understand it, that is the pay TV cables. Okay. Is that right?
Yep, that sounds right.
Yeah. So he's like, we've got this multi-technology mix. We're going to send the data up to one node, and we're going to use the cables that are already there, and then we're going to send it out to the premises. It's going to be really shit. You're going to love it. It's going to be cheap, except actually it's not going to be that cheap.
When the crazy quotes from him of being like, why would anyone possibly need the internet that fast, and just a complete inability to imagine the future in any way whatsoever.
Yes, there was some quote that he was like, I'm perfectly confident that 2 megabits per second, like something ridiculous, is going to be absolutely adequate for the average Australian household, which obviously it's not.
Brilliant.
Very short-sighted. As you pointed out, Tom, in your book, quote, by the time 99% of the compromised NBN rollout was completed in July 2020, it cost more than Labor's original model. We had a slower average internet speed than Thailand, Romania and Madagascar, and complaints to the telecommunications industry ombudsman had increased by over 200%. And we continue to be one of the slowest have one of the slowest internet speeds in the OECD, and some of the highest prices, like per megabit per second. There's some measure they do that is like per speed of internet or per megabit. I don't know. That's one of the most expensive in the world.
It's so embarrassing. And it's such a meme, right? It's just like a default. That's just the reality of living in Australia. People who visit here or who come here for lots of different reasons. There are lots of amazing things about working in Australia, but often people like from Europe or America will be like, how do you guys live like this?
What's up with this internet? Yeah. Well, and we're not the first people to point it out. Do you remember Pauline Hanson's pitch to gamers?
Yes, I do remember this. But I think this often comes up in one of the all-time Australian political tweets because it is pretty great.
Yeah, she was onto it. In 2016, Pauline Hanson, for those who don't remember, tweeted, "Kids from the bush tell me because their speeds are so bad, they keep getting beaten by gamers from overseas.
Unacceptable. I don't like it.
I don't like it. Please explain.
I think people were almost impressed that Pauline was able to find a kind of semi-racist angle on the slow internet issue.
True.
It's like, well done, Pauline. I didn't know how you got xenophobia into this, but there you go.
Because it's a bit of a meme, right, that gamers are like, it's the fucking lag. I only lost because of the lag.
yes. The ping. Yeah. The ping off the tower, man.
So yes, courting the next generation of angry young gamers, really on brand for Pauline. But I mean, she was onto something. It was very slow. So when you say, you're like, oh, what do you mean finish it? Was it not finished? Is it still ongoing? Yes, because in 2020, I want to say, or like 2019, 2020, the Morrison government was like, okay, actually, you know that thing where we were like, no, fibre to the premises is too expensive. We're going to do fibre to the node instead. We changed our mind. We are going to invest $3.5 billion for about 2 million premises that are currently on fibre to the node to be upgraded to full fibre to the premises. And
once again, I believe I remember the press conference. I think it was Paul Fletcher maybe, or anyway, the communication minister, he came out and said, the time has come for the NBN. This is an idea. Right. Australia is now ready for actually a good NBN.
Ready. Just weren't ready before.
We had a bad one that was good too, but now it's time to have the good one. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And Kevin Rudd was like, what the fuck? You guys didn't even think that you didn't fucking want this in the fucking. Yeah, he was really angry. But yeah, look, so they've been rolling that out across a bunch of premises. And then actually after the last federal election when Labor won, they were like, yes, we'll do more of that. They allocated $2.4 billion more for an additional 1.5 premises, plus a bit of money, like $500 million, no bit of money, that's a lot of money, $500 million to upgrade fixed wireless and satellite NBN connections. I'm curious about this because, like, I mean, yes, we often talk about fibre to the premises because we're like, that's what we should have done, and fibre to the node is shit. But is satellite and wireless probably the future of the internet?
That's my understanding. Again, we're really getting towards the boundaries of my knowledge here. That's certainly what I hear. Yes, I assume when Elon Musk controls everything with an army of Starlink satellites orbiting the Earth.
Yeah,
that is my understanding. Is that's how you get proper, insanely large, very fast and direct and truly global and easily accessible internet. That's the dream.
That's the thing. There are a lot of like both my mum and my dad don't. I think they can't get the NBN. Their internet is just fucking god awful. And I hate to admit it, but like I helped mum get Starlink because that's the only way she can have the fucking internet. And it does, like it's pretty transformative for her. She can actually do shit at home now, especially when she was working from home. It was just impossible on their like 3G, 4G, like she would just tether from her phone. Oh. That was her internet.
Can I get Starlink in my apartment in Melbourne?
Yeah, I think you can. You literally just like go to I'm not advertising for Elon, but it's very easy. All you have to do is go to your local JB Hi-Fi and pick up your little kit, and then you have to kind of install it on the roof and shit.
Okay.
But yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Okay. So it's been rolling out. There've been, I guess, that's like 3 million plus households so far. And now we come to the next election and Albanese goes, all right, last round, $3 billion for an additional 622,000 households. And that pretty much takes us to the limits of what the NBN, I guess, believes they can, like feasibility wise, that they can do fibre to the premises. And so by 2030, yes, 95% it is of premises will have that full fibre option. I think one thing I find interesting about this is the way that Albanese and Labor really emphasize the like productivity element of internet and why we need a good NBN. He even has this quote in the ABC this week where he was announcing this additional funding where he says that Abbott and the coalition thought it was, quote, all about downloading videos and movies. And, quote, they didn't understand that the NBN is about productivity, driving the economy, creating jobs. It is about how we live our life. And I'm like, well, is it about how we live our life or is it just about productivity, driving the economy and creating jobs? Because I think why does it need to be that? Why does that need to be the only justification for a proper fucking internet in this country?
Well, that's interesting. Well, I mean, I'd agree with this objection on lots of other issues or lots of other fronts, lots of other pieces of infrastructure and the way we make decisions. Education, for example, I think is always often framed in productivity and business of the future as opposed to valuing education in and of itself. Yeah. I'm not too fussed about the government justifying infrastructure spending by highlighting the productivity gains that faster internet brings. Yeah. What would you rather them emphasize?
Yeah, but to specifically be like, it's not about downloading videos and movies. And like for a lot of people, actually, I mean, it is. Like a lot of people, that is the experience where you're like, wow, I wish I had better internet so I could fucking relax when I get home from my soul-crushing job. It's like my little game, dissociate for a bit.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I don't know if I'm quite as aggrieved as you are. And I only say that in that we're literally quotes from Abbott at the time where it really did seem like he thought it was just an indulgence, as opposed to just appreciating what the internet does generally. I mean, of course, the internet is, of course, a massive part of doing business in Australia and the economy. Of course. Like it's huge. And so faster internet both makes it easier to download videos to the internet, and that's good. That improves people's lives. It's better connection, people being able to keep in touch, combating loneliness in many ways, medical implications. But yes, it also has a massive impact on how people can do business.
Humans' lives outside of work are valuable. And like the government, that is something that the government should support, is just people's ability to like live a good life.
That's fair.
So yeah. Anyway, just quickly, I mean, I know we've got a lot to get to, but I guess the other side of this is Albanese is so deeply ironically framing this as, oh, well, this is about Labor supporting public ownership and the coalition would get in there and privatise the NBN, because we would never do anything like that. And the NBN is so, like, it is emblematic of the pitfalls of privatisation, right? Like this is, it in your book, it is in that chapter about how cooked privatisation is. And you kind of talk about how in selling off Telstra, when John Howard did that, he, quote, sold off the Australian government's capacity to design and build major communications infrastructure. And that's part of why the NBN rollout was so fraught and expensive and cooked, because Telstra still controlled, like we sold off Telstra, we no longer owned it, but they still owned the fixed line telephone network. So competitors had to like rent that at wholesale prices, and they did everything they could to exploit that monopoly. I was reading about how apparently at one point, half of all federal court cases in Australia were disputes between Telstra, its commercial rivals, and the competition regulator. Like they were like, fuck you, because we're a private fucking company now. This is what happens. We're going to fuck you over till the end of time. Eventually they were like, fine, you can use the cables, but you still have to deal with this and all these other issues because we've got all the ducts and the pipes and the connections that you need to roll out the NBN.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the Rudd government went to Telstra being like, we want a national broadband network. And Telstra refused to do it in the end. They were like, no, this deal isn't profitable enough for us. So you've got a democratically elected government that wants to do something like that would help build the nation, that would improve people's lives, that we clearly need in the 21st century. But because we've sold off the communications network to private interests, so they're just dictated by profit and returning value to shareholders, we can't do it. So the government had to go ahead and just do it themselves, basically. It had to set up the NBN co and everything.
And to be clear, that was like John Howard completed that process of privatising Telstra, but the foundations were laid by Keating, right?
Sure. Yeah,
by
totally.
a Labor government. Yeah.
Yes, who also very kindly privatised Qantas, which has also turned into one of the worst corporations in the fucking country, and a bunch of evil demons. Yeah.
Yeah. And so even then when they go to set up the NBN, they set it up as a government-owned corporation.
Yes.
And so it is technically publicly owned, but it is set up to run like a private corporation. It has to turn a profit. It's fucking its boss. So Stephen Rue, the head of NBN, makes $3 million a year. I don't know if he's still the NBN CEO or head or whatever. Right. But that was, I think, 2022 to 2023. Made $3 million a year. So that's really normal. That's good. That's
more than the Prime Minister. Yep.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so it's still, it's set up like a private corporation, and government-owned corporations, or GOCs, they are like privatization ready, right? Like they are set up that in such a way that, yes, it's meant to be profitable, and ultimately you can offload it because someone will be interested, a private entity or private investor will be interested in taking this on as a profitable enterprise, which means that it doesn't run, like its objective is not primarily to roll out an effective and accessible and affordable internet infrastructure for the whole of Australia. Its objective is to make money. And that also, it has to make money because it has to pay back the government, which tipped in, nearly $50 billion? Like, yeah, $29.5 billion in equity and $19.5 billion as a loan. And so the government's like, well, we have to get that repaid in interest, because even though the NBN balance is, quote, off balance sheet, it's like off budget, they still need to get paid that money back. And so they need the NBN to be, quote, profitable, which is why then the costs get passed on to consumers.
Great. That's a good system, I think. I like it.
It's really good. So, yeah, like I said, it's set up in such a way that clearly it was privatisation ready. And I think that the Greens and a lot of other skeptics would say that Labor set it up, ultimately planning to privatise it. Once the NBN rollout was completed, probably, then they would sell it off, and that would be that. The Greens actually secured amendments. I kind of didn't know about this. In 2010, we got amendments to require a parliamentary vote before it was privatised. Again, one of those things that I'm like, does anyone know this? Anyone in Australia know that the Greens have been fighting for this thing to keep the NBN in public hands for, more than a decade? Probably not.
Crazy, particularly as Albo now is trumpeting, saying we're the ones that will keep the NBN in public hands.
That's what I mean.
That's what we love.
So then, like last year, the government introduces this bill that would enshrine public ownership of the NBN in legislation. The Libs voted down that bill, or they opposed it. And so, Albanese is out there now saying only a Labor government will protect the NBN, will keep it in public hands, will avoid the disastrous mistakes of the past of privatisation, blah, blah, blah. The Liberals would sell it off at the drop of a hat. And it's like, you were going to fucking do that. Don't pretend. Don't fucking gaslight me.
Guy in the hot dog costume meme. Being like, what?
We're all trying to find the guy, yeah.
And so what is the coalition's response to this? Because they were like, we support, they came out and shat all over the Labor version of the NBN, of course, off the back of this announcement, but they also said that we wouldn't stand in the way of this new funding. So they support the funding that was announced, apparently, but have they said much about we will sell it off, or have they sort of made their position clear?
No, I should have looked this up before we did the show, Tom. I don't know what reasoning they actually gave for opposing Labor's bill.
Right.
Maybe they just are saying, well, we need to maintain flexibility if the budget requires that, we offload assets, but it's not in our plan or some shit.
Right.
Or maybe they are just like, yeah, fuck it, let's sell it. I don't really know. Do you think they will sell it if they win?
Hard to say. I mean, if they haven't run on it and they hadn't said that's what they would do, they'd be very cautious to do that. I think even the Liberals and the people in the coalition, the free market psychos, are very aware of how unpopular privatisation is. Something like Telstra, you really need to build the case over a long period of time. It's like a long political project. I don't think there's much that folks are really desperate or hankering to sell off or have identified, mainly because most of it has already been sold off, for fuck's sake. But I think with corporate Australia being so on the nose, cost of living crisis, I reckon even the coalition would be like, handing over the NBN to private hands is not going to play well. That doesn't fit in with our general message of supporting small business and being for the little guy. Yeah,
you'd think so. You'd hope so.
All right, but we're going to get that super fast internet in 2035. Is that the plan?
2030.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
Yeah.
All right, see you then.
You were and are a great agent. And when you became Denise, I told all your colleagues, those clown comics, to fix their hearts or die.
Okay, here's some other hits from the election. I'll try that again.
No, leave that.
Leave it in. All right, fuck it. Let's talk about the election. Some more stuff was happening on the election front this week. The coalition launched their campaign. Did you watch any of this? Did you see all the shiny pictures? Did you see Peter Dutton being his best self?
I must have slept through my alarm.
What? On Saturday, opposition leader Peter Dutton kicked off his unofficial election campaign with a rally in Melbourne listing the coalition's... I wonder if he acknowledged country. I wonder if he said it's great to be here in Naarm.
I don't think so, Tom. I don't think he did.
listing the coalition's priorities if it takes government, but not unveiling any new policies. At the event in the Labor-held seat of Chisholm, Dutton said that thanks to Labor, our country is less safe, our country is less cohesive. For so many Australians, aspiration has been replaced by anxiety. Optimism has turned to pessimism, and national confidence changed to dispiritedness. Beautiful writing here.
Wow.
A newly elected coalition government is at least a chance to reverse the decline. I want Australia to emerge out of Labor's cost of living crisis. You got to hand it to them. They're pretty good at like branding and labeling, stuff like that. I want future generations of Australians to not be denied the prosperity that previous generations of Australians knew. Thanks, Peter.
I'm feeling kind of patriotic.
Fuck. Maybe this guy's all right. Dutton described the Albanese government as one of the most incompetent governments in our history and said Anthony Albanese was one of our weakest prime ministers. Weak leaders create hard times, but strong leaders create better times.
Isn't the saying hard times create, or like weak men create
hard times?
Hard times and hard times create strong. I don't know.
It's like, where is he getting this from? The fucking X accounts
ChatGPT, Tom.
ChatGPT, or those accounts that are just like a Greek statue as their profile photo. That's pretty.
Yes.
Weak times create hard men, or need hard men, something like that.
Oh yeah.
Hard times create strong men. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Yeah, fuck. Anyway, we will get to what exactly the priorities for the coalition are in a moment, but I guess what do you think of that general pitch? And Dutton put himself out there with these kind of ideas. I mean, keying into current dissatisfaction with the status quo is probably pretty smart.
Yeah, but isn't this the thing that we were talking about? How? No, yeah, you're right. Okay, we were talking about how there's that interesting divide between like the quote unquote elites and the rest of Australia, and so. Yep. While the elites, like those with a university degree living in the inner city, kind of feel like Australia is doing okay, things are doing all right, they might want a little bit of change but not too much, they are in a minority, and there is still across the country this broader sense of, like anger, disillusionment, things are getting worse, we need a radical change. And that's clearly what Dutton's playing to with this. He's like, things are shit, aren't they? Yeah. So let's change it.
Right, which any opposition would do, right? Any opposition trying to take government is going to appeal to, hey, are you dissatisfied with the status quo, hoping there are more people dissatisfied than satisfied, and they're going to say, let's shake it up. Are you better off than when Labor took over? Classic lines. He also unveiled the coalition slogan, let's get Australia back on track. Do you think that
Australia
works?
Great again?
It's they've got the same advisors, I think, for the New Zealand campaign, where the Nationals there, the Conservative Party, had exactly the same slogan. Let's get Australia. Let's get New Zealand back on track. It worked out very well, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think again, we have lots of criticisms of the Albanese Labor government, but there are all these like other factors I think that have led to the reality of how people are feeling right now, that Dutton is able pretty easily to point to that and say, see all this bad stuff that's happening right now, that's all associated with Labor. Give us a go. It's just annoying how massive those changes are and how much they wipe out people's memory of how terrible the coalition government was. But that's politics.
I know. Things were really, really shit. Yeah. It is hard. I mean, it's interesting that this could be effective in getting people to change their vote to the LNP, because that kind of implies that people would be somewhat hopeful that doing that is going to make a difference in their lives, which conversely, like my understanding is that most people don't think that the government can make a big difference in their life. But I guess they're willing to, on the balance of what they believe are two choices, feeling we have compulsory voting, they're like, well, I guess I've got to try something, so I'll go for the ones that aren't in there at the moment. I don't know.
I think there's much less of a sentiment of like, fuck the Labor government, like to punish Albanese. It's not so much like the same way that people were really sick of the coalition government and had the cricket bets. It's much more either you've done nothing or, I don't know what you're about, or you just seem to be sort of treading water, as opposed to
You don't think there's anger at Labor?
Well, not like in a, let's fucking chuck them out kind of vibe. I think it'd be, they're still a first-term government, so you'd be thinking it'd be much more like, fucking come on, hurry up. Maybe I'll give you one more chance. Whereas,
what about from the left, though?
Oh, sure. Well, the left are voting for us. As they should. Carry on. Don't get angry with us. We're great. So I just want to check. So Coalition's Let's Get Australia Back on Track. Labor, I think, is building Australia's future.
Oh, okay.
What's our slogan? What have we got? Have we got anything yet? You should know this. Isn't this like your job in some way?
I don't know if there is one. Is there?
Unfuck the future, you cunts.
No, I don't think it's unfuck the future. I feel like it's keep Dutton out at this stage. I don't know. Maybe there isn't one.
The priorities that Dutton outlined that they're looking at are relieving cost of living pressures, supporting small business, rebalancing the nation's migration program, very sinister phrase, delivering nuclear energy, restoring housing affordability, growing the economy. Oh, wow, they're coming out for growing the economy. That's really huge. Brave. Keeping Australians safe, lifting GP numbers, a tougher approach to crime, and a closer relationship with Israel.
Oh, they spelled that out.
Apparently, this is Dutton pledged to call the Prime Minister of Israel in the first days of a Dutton government to mend a relationship he claimed that Labor has trashed amid the Middle East conflicts.
I don't know how much of a bubble I'm in, but polling-wise, most people don't want a stronger relationship with Israel, right?
Nope.
In Australia? Yeah.
Sure don't.
Really bizarre choice.
Almost completely absent over the past 15 months in all the media conversation is any consultation with what the public want, what average Australians actually think about the conflict in the Middle East and where their sympathies lie. Overwhelmingly supportive of either being neutral or supporting the Palestinian cause and seeing what Israel is doing as a disgrace. But you just don't hear that much. What do you think the vibe on Peter Dutton is at this point? Because all the, again, political commentary is sort of like, don't underestimate this guy. Voters might not be falling over themselves and in love with Peter Dutton, but they sort of, it's much more like we take him seriously. We're not terrified of him. We don't buy into the perception of Peter Dutton that is often presented by the left. And I think there's almost kind of a Trump element to it where it's like, okay, if you hate the left, if you hate quote unquote woke people, yada, 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 all those people seem to really, really hate this guy. And he's still around. So maybe there's something to it. Or I have a level of respect for him for staring down the bloody woke lefties and the pink-haired, blue-haired university students.
But he doesn't play into that as much as Trump does. Maybe it would be more effective if he did a similar, if he tried to build the cult of personality kind of the Peter Dutton thing, whereas instead he shies away from it and tries to go the other way and does all these PR pieces about not being a monster and actually being quite nice. If he was just the fucking woke tards hate me, flames, I'm awesome. That might be more effective at this point.
A little bit of that. I remember there's that classic tweet from him of you lefties are so easy.
You lefties are too easy. But he doesn't do that anymore. Don't you think that's years and years ago, right?
Well, he's not afraid of a culture war. I mean, with Trump winning, he's sort of saying all this wokeness stuff is over, Australian flags, Australia Day. He'll dip his toe into that pool.
Him making it about himself, I guess is what I mean. He doesn't be I am the guy that the left hates. He's just the left hate Australia.
Right.
And we love Australia. True. He doesn't kind of be I'm the warrior that's going to, take on the people turning your kids trans.
Interesting. Which might be a reflection too of just having a parliamentary system, right? And not a presidential one.
Maybe, yeah.
Dutton has recently sought to soften his image. He's been doing this for a long time. The softening of the image has been going for a long time.
Recently, yeah.
With an Instagram message emphasizing social unity and a long-form podcast interview discussing youth mental health, his experience in the police force, belly flopping into a pool, and his upbringing with a focus on the importance of family. I think we're going to have to listen to that podcast.
No, he's trying to for some reason the strategy around his branding at least seems to be trying to soften him, make him look more centrist or more relatable rather than leaning into the opposite of the left thing.
Labor's response to the sort of media coverage that Dutton and the coalition got after this launch was to focus on Medicare. Believe me, if Peter Dutton becomes the Prime Minister of Australia after this election, he will repeat, what he did in government and destroy Medicare, said Stephen Jones. This election will be a referendum on Medicare. Okay, this prompted calls of they're doing Mediscare again. This is coming back. What do you think? Is that good for us? Is that going to work? What do you think that's going to look like?
I think that's really interesting because that's not like Labor hasn't been doing that much up until the Greens started talking about dental and mental health into Medicare being priority demands. So I have to wonder if that is like at least somewhat influenced by the Greens' strategy and whether Labor's trying to reclaim issue ownership of Medicare, which they arguably have had for a long time, had around Mediscare. I don't know.
But I remember seeing some Dutton response being like, when I was health minister, Medicare covered, like the rebate was a lot higher than it is now, right? Like he can point to the fact that, again.
Didn't they? But I mean, the Libs froze Medicare rebates for like
Julie
10 years or
Gillard
something.
froze Medicare rebates.
Wait, what?
Medicare rebates were frozen under the Gillard goddamn government. I want to fact check myself on this because people will.
Because someone said recently, like the Libs froze rebates, and I was like, oh yeah, sounds right.
Here we go. Health Minister Craig Lund has highlighted the Medicare rebate freeze began under former Labor Prime Minister Julia Gillard.
Damn. Maybe it's a case of she was like, we'll freeze it for 3 years. And then the LNP were like, how about 10?
I'm not saying the coalition are great on Medicare whatsoever, but I'm just saying that it's interesting. But I think Labor would be like, what's an attack we've got on Dutton? Okay, we're strong on Medicare. He's from coalition. We can do a Mediscare, or we could at least point to Medicare as a battleground for the election. I think that's probably good for us, again, if it elevates the salience of Medicare, and we can sort of say, well, Labor says they're going to defend Medicare, but we actually think we want to expand it and make it bigger and better.
Yes, and I think like one of, the clearest lessons that I have taken in my years of campaigning is that the most galvanizing thing for most people is fear of losing something good. Sure. It's very hard to be like, imagine if we could have this good thing. People are like, or, stop this bad thing from going ahead. Like specifically when it's like save X thing that you love, I think that's very effective.
Oh God. But we have to keep trying, for fuck's sake. We have to.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise we're screwed on that front. We have to be a party that's prepared to do that.
And, I think dental and mental into Medicare are close enough to something that people recognize as real and possible, that it is possible and worth pursuing, but just.
Just quickly to round things out, some Greens election news. We had a bit of a few media hits and little bits and pieces about what the Greens election campaign might look like. Piece in The Guardian, Bant says Labor Greens power share would bring golden era and confirms goal is to stop with Dutton. Now, this is similar territory. We've discussed this a fair bit about the strategy now, about keeping Dutton out, what that looks like, but this seems like an exclusive that Adam gave to The Guardian to discuss this. Bant says a Green Labor power sharing parliament could see a golden era of progressive reform that banishes Conservatives to the political wilderness, as he confirms that stopping Peter Dutton becoming Prime Minister is now his party's main election focus. He was sort of saying, yes, we're all about making people's lives better. We could expand dental to Medicare, for example. We can stop this US-style shift to the right like Trump if we kind of work together, or the minority government that would emerge if the Greens did well and Labor held on to power. That's what it would look like. That's his general pitch. A minority parliament could keep Peter Dutton out and get those progressive reforms that I think will set the country up for generations. So again, positive, anti-Tory, that's good. But, and again, I don't want to be a broken record on this particular issue, but later in the article it says, the Greens are hoping to pick up 5 extra seats at the 2025 election. Wills and McNamara in Melbourne, Richmond in New South Wales, Perth in Western Australia, and Sturt in South Australia. Okay, so those are 4 of the target seats. 4 of them are Labor and 1 of them is Liberal. But it faces a challenge to hold the ground that won in 2022, with the Liberals hoping to regain Brisbane and Ryan, and Labor desperate to unseat Max Chandler-Mather in Griffith. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this, because I guess there are 2 things going on here, okay?
Yeah.
So I think the pitch of saying we're about keeping Dutton out is really about the Greens holding on to their current seats, okay? So obviously holding on to Melbourne, but making sure that the Libs don't pick up Ryan on Brisbane, which takes them closer to government. And obviously we want to hang on to Griffith, right? Because we've got that and Max is awesome. So I think of what I've figured out my problem with this strategy is it's sort of 2 conversations. Keeping Dutton out means re-electing, hanging on to the seats that we have, and then you've got these 5 target seats, which they're going to run very hard in and go for. It's just that the message of keeping Dutton out doesn't necessarily resonate when you're gunning for 4 Labor seats.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think, yes, that's what I would say, is that keeping Dutton out is most relevant in like the seats of Brisbane and Ryan, which are absolutely at risk of falling to the LNP and would help them win government. Yep. That absolutely makes sense. And also, from my perspective, it's the most important thing is that we keep those seats, and like growing would be fantastic, but losing those seats would be devastating for a lot of people. Like, the other thing though is, and I don't know, maybe this is just a cop out, like, but I do feel as though there's this thing of target seats, and are we targeting Labor or Liberal seats? It is just a fact that journalists are always going to go, or media is always going to be like, what seats are you hoping to pick up? What are your next most like likely seats that the Greens could win? And you're just going to look at the psephology and be like, these are the ones that are most winnable.
Right.
So, where those fall and whether they're Labor or Liberal, the fact is the Greens, I don't know if this is the case across the country, but certainly in Queensland we run in every single seat. So you're really just listing the ones that they have the best shot of winning, and they're going to put more resources into that.
The federal party and the state offices of respective branches have strategies, and at least except for New South Wales.
But you'd be stupid to try and win, like to put money into a seat that you can't win.
Yes, sure.
Based on the psephology.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's just, and I guess maybe it just won't come up in the McNamara campaign. Are people going to spend a lot of time sort of saying, oh, we're about keeping Dutton out? I mean, if you're running against Josh Burns, then that's probably not just the strongest message, right?
That would be weird. It probably just wouldn't resonate with people.
McNamara's like, well, we're not, there's no, or Will certainly, there's no danger of this seat going to the Libs. Potentially Libs may not even run in that seat. So it's like, yes, you need to have a different message. But, and that message is going to be critical of the Labor government and pro-Greens.
But like by broadcasting that the Greens are committed to, and like that it's a priority of theirs to keep Dutton out, that assuages some of the concerns that some people who would otherwise vote Labor because they maybe don't understand that they can vote Greens and not elect an LNP government, like that assuages some of their concerns. And so it does help them in just like a broad sense, I think, to potentially pick up new seats, because there's always going to be those wasted vote or like fear of LNP swing voters who stick with Labor out of fear.
Fair. Just briefly on policy, on Thursday we launched the public education policy. That was an interesting announcement. I mean, basically the stuff in this announcement is all the things that we've been talking about before when we've covered the Greens' critique of the lack of Gonski funding and sort of saying that, hey, we believe in Gonski and public schools should be funded fully to the schooling resourcing standard. That's 25% of funding for all states and territories, except in the NT, where it would remain at 40%. I think Labor's offered 22.5% over the next between now and 2030, which is just not enough there. It's also talking about establishing an infrastructure fund to the tune of billions of dollars, and also $388 million to install air ventilation systems and HEPA filters in classrooms under the Greens plan.
Pretty good to have clean air in your classroom.
I like clean air, especially with all those stinky teenagers.
Oh my goodness, the BO.
Can we get something to suck out the Lynx Africa here, please?
Lynx and Impulse. Are the girls still using Impulse, do you think?
No idea. Not the guy to ask. All funded by raising taxes on corporations, of course. That was great. Good on you, Penny Allman-Payne. There's also an article from Sarah Hanson-Young about environmental policy, nature policy, basically saying, come on, Labor, fucking hard the fuck up. And I guess sort of she mentions, where's the quote here, about nature and climate being the elephant in the room. While cost of living pressures will likely dominate the federal election, Hanson-Young says it's the Greens' role to highlight the elephant in the room, the climate crisis and the environment. Which I thought was interesting. We haven't had much chat about it at all, right? We've crossed 1.5 degrees. California is on fire. Last year was the warmest year of record, of course, and yet I don't see much chat about 2025 being another climate election. Yeah,
no, it doesn't feel like a climate election. Weirdly, right? Like it just doesn't. I think the struggle is that people are like, well, renewable energy is being built, and so it's true that all is left is like stop fucking building new coal and gas mines. And again, that feels depressing. It feels depressing to just keep being like, stop, don't. Please don't do that. Please stop. Begging you to stop doing that. Stop. Like, how many times can you do that? I mean, do you think Sarah Hanson-Young, in doing this interview, is trying to be like, the Greens aren't talking about the environment enough? Or is she just reiterating that the Greens are the strongest choice for people who care about the environment and climate?
Well, I guess so. I mean, like, it's her portfolio, right? So, of course, she's environmental spokesperson. She's going to talk about environmental stuff. It makes sense. And it was sort of tied into some other more nature-focused stuff. So, preventing the destruction of koala habitat. The other big priorities they're going to be talking about is shielding Scott Reef from the Woodside's Browse gas project, renewing the push to give the Australian Bight World Heritage status in South Australia, and protecting the Maugean skate from salmon farming. I don't know the skate, but people like the skate.
The sea, it's like a what do you call that? It's like a stingray kind of vibe,
right? In Tassie from salmon farming. Oh, I don't know much about it. I know that salmon farming in Tasmania is fully cooked.
Really into it.
He's really into
obsessed.
It.
Yeah.
So they're also like, those are sort of more specific, like environmental
nature-y
campaigns
things
and focuses. Yes, and protecting koalas is something that we all like. She did have this good line, I thought. She said, "Mother Nature has compromised a lot, and it's time that the fossil fuel industry, the loggers, and big business sit back and let somebody get in there to protect the environment properly." I think that Mother Nature's compromised. She's given us up heaps, right? Enough compromising.
I don't know. There's something about the term Mother Nature that
Gaia
makes my eyes glaze over a bit.
Oh, Earth Mother? You don't want any of this?
She.
And the final one I wanted to buy this amused me a lot, because Adam was talking about, golden era of progressive reform, working together, keeping out the Tories. Well, it doesn't look like the Labor Party is going to be reciprocating that. This is an article from the Australian Financial Review. Labor has for the first time recruited a dedicated advertising agency to target the Greens at the federal election as it tries to stave off the minor party in key inner city battleground seats. In a sign, Labor is determined to protect its left flank from the minor party. It has hired Melbourne-based The Shannon Company, the team behind industry superannuation's breakout Compare the Pair ads, to develop a campaign specifically targeting seats where the contest is between Labor and Greens candidates.
So, like Griffith?
Yeah. Definitely.
Just or do they mean seats currently held by Labor that are at threat from the Greens as well? Maybe?
No, that would be Griffith, that would be McNamara, that would be Wills. Yeah, okay. I think there's probably Wills is probably the number one priority, or McNamara because it's so close. Yes, that's certainly there. When I read that, I thought it was the Meerkat Compare campaign. I'm like, oh, we're fucked, man. We're fucked. We can't compete with, if it's the people that came up with that shit, then we're dead. But no, it's the super one where they do that little
with the hands.
Yeah,
like well, we know it. I mean, I will just say, being like Labor for the first time recruiting a dedicated advertising agency to target the Greens. Sure, maybe that is technically true, but absolute bullshit if anyone is trying to pretend that this is the first time Labor has dedicated a specific pool of funds to an arm operating within or in connection with the party that its purpose is to target the Greens. Like, that has absolutely existed at previous elections. And to be honest, I had been thinking, oh, wow, Labor's like not doing as much of their dirt unit shit on the Greens as they have in previous years. And maybe they won't bother because Advance is spending $5 million for them. But no, it is that important to them that they got to chip into Advance's bucket and do this as well.
Well, it'll be interesting whether they go the Advance. I mean, Advance talk about Greens policies sometimes, but the main attacks from Advance, it seems to me, is more about like who the Greens are and they've changed, and
when does Labor ever talk about Greens policies?
Well, it'd be interesting if Labor did talk about was like going on the attack about this is what the Greens policy is and this is why that sucks.
What policy would they like? Genuinely, I don't, because that's not Labor's strategy.
That's like, not their strategy.
They never attack us on policies.
Yeah. What would they go for? They like throw up bad headlines of stuff that have happened with the Greens, like the CFMEU, some Gaza stuff, maybe.
This, like stories of women being harassed or whatever in the party.
Right. Which is what the
Dorinda Cox bullying.
Sure.
Probably.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, they will do those. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they did a little bit of like Greens, maybe not extreme, but unrealistic kind of messaging, right? Because that seems to be their main line is, the Greens policies sound good, but it's expensive.
We can deliver. They can deliver. Yeah, right. I think it'll be interesting about, particularly say in McNamara, for example, how Josh Burns campaigns around issues and the history of stuff that's happened in that electorate in light of the Israel-Gaza war, how that all kind of rolls out, I suppose. Yeah, who knows? Do you think they'll do a compare the pair ad where they'll just have Labor and Greens?
Oh, compare the pair, Greens and Labor.
That's just the one idea this company has.
No, because then the Greens would look way better. I mean, I hope they do.
My political party isn't funded by fossil fuel capital and is against genocide. My one is.
Compare the pair.
From that same article, we got some insight into what the other political parties are doing in terms of hiring agencies to deliver their message. The coalition has also adopted the multiple agency approach. It has again brought on the controversial New Zealand-based creative agency Topham Guerin to supplement.
Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, how would you pronounce it?
I don't know. That was my take.
Let's go with that then.
Very different.
Along with the Liberal Party's go-to advertising team at KWPX agency. KWPX really cool. Was behind There's a Hole in Your Budget, Dear Labour jingle.
Yeah, sick. We're going to get some more good tunes.
Remember how that one drove us insane and woke us up at night? Yeah. The ad was panned by industry experts but received muted praise from political creatives, including from the Labor side, who know election ads are very different beasts to those most industry people are accustomed. I mean, it didn't work out well in 2022, so I don't know if you'd be holding that one up. I guess that's
true. I still think that, like maybe they're onto something, that it's like when you're doing an ad for a company, you want the company to come across as like respectable and not necessarily a joke or to the company not to be like a joke. Whereas with a political ad like that, it kind of doesn't matter if the ad is a joke.
Right.
It's like it still sticks in your mind. It still fits within this broader narrative that Labor are poor economic managers.
There's a hole in your budget, dear Labor.
Dear Labor.
But KWPX also came up with the bill Australia can't afford in 2019, which you would say, well, sure, that did very well.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember Bill Shorten is the bill Australia can't afford? Oh, okay.
No. I ran in that election. There you go.
There you go. That's who they've got in their army. Which agency have we brought on board to help us with that?
Oh, yeah. Who should we get? I don't know. Deloitte.
Let's get the Gruen team to help us out. Get the ABC.
Who does good ads? What about that company that was doing the cartoons for Pauline Hanson? They were kind of funny.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good. Frank Walker from National Tiles. Get him in.
Frank Walker, National Tiles. All right, I think that's it. I think that's the show, Tom.
That's it. That's a show.
And that means
more taxes are coming, more taxes, more taxes. There's a hole in your budget, dear Labor, a hole.
It won't be easy.
Call to action. I think you know what it's going to be. This coming weekend is the 26th of January. It's Invasion Day. It is the anniversary of the day that this country was invaded by British colonisers, and it also, more recently, happens to be the date that some people think we should celebrate our National Day on. I disagree. What? I disagree. And so do lots of First Nations people. And First Nations people have been organising rallies against this for many years. There will be one near you. We're going to put the link in the show notes to the ANTAR list of events. I guess have a look at where your local rally is, and also maybe familiarise yourself with what local traditional owners are calling for and what language they're using, because there's still variation. Like some people refer to it as Survival Day, some people use Invasion Day, some people want to change the date. Most people, I think, now at this point are like, let's talk about what's going on here in this country's history before we settle on a date. But the point is, go along and support traditional owners and First Nations justice however you can.
Support our show too, please. Less important, but still nice to do if you can. Follow us on social media at Serious Danger AU. Become a patron at patreon.com/Serious Danger AU. Give us a 5-star review. Send us an email anytime. hello@seriousdangerpod.com. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Serious Danger Australia.